Back in the day, grocery shopping wasn't just about grabbing milk and eggs, it was an experience. You had your go-to store, familiar cashiers, and maybe even a free cookie if you were lucky. But some of the biggest names from that era, completely gone. Let's look back at 15 forgotten grocery stores. First up, A&P. This grocery giant once dominated the American landscape with a staggering 15,000 locations. For many baby boomers, A&P wasn't just a place to buy food, it was where you caught up with neighbors and discovered new products. What made A&P special was its innovation. They pioneered the concept of private label products long before store brands became commonplace. Their 8 o'clock coffee was legendary. You could smell it being freshly ground as you walked through the doors. That aroma alone was enough to make you forget whatever else you came in to buy. The supermarket chain had humble beginnings as the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company in 1859, focusing initially on tea before expanding into the grocery empire we all knew. By the 1930s, A&P had become America's first true retail giant. Sadly, A&P's downfall came from the very tradition that made it successful. While other stores modernized with wider aisles and expanded selections, A&P clung to its old-fashioned approach. By the time they realized they needed to change, discount stores and modern supermarkets had already won shoppers' hearts. The final A&P stores closed in 2015, marking the end of an era that stretched across 3 centuries. Safeway stores still exist in many regions, but for countless baby boomers across America, their local Safeway simply vanished. During the 1980s, Safeway performed a disappearing act, selling off hundreds of locations in Texas and along the East Coast. Imagine the confusion of loyal shoppers who'd been visiting the same store for decades, only to find it transformed overnight. The history of Safeway goes back to 1915 when M.B. Skaggs purchased a tiny grocery store from his father in Idaho. From these humble beginnings grew an empire that revolutionized how Americans shopped. Safeway introduced innovations we now take for granted, things like expiration dates on perishable products and nutritional labeling. What made Safeway special wasn't just convenience, but community. These weren't sterile shopping environments. They were social hubs where neighbors debated the merits of competing brands while waiting in checkout lines. The store's employees often knew customers by name, remembering favorite products. At its peak, Safeway was known for its distinctive store layouts and impressive array of house brand products that rivaled national brands in quality but beat them in price. While today's Safeway stores may carry the same name, baby boomers often insist it's just not the same as the neighborhood fixtures they grew up with, where cashiers counted change back by hand and bag boys actually carried groceries to your car. Piggly Wiggly. The grocery store with the name that always gets a chuckle actually revolutionized how we shop. Piggly Wiggly, founded in 1916 by Clarence Saunders in Memphis, Tennessee, wasn't just another market. It was America's first self-service grocery store. Before this groundbreaking innovation, shopping meant handing a list to a clerk who would gather your items while you waited. Saunders' brilliant idea let customers wander through organized aisles, selecting their own products at their own pace. This concept was so radical that shoppers actually needed instructions on how to use the store. Some were suspicious about this newfangled approach, but the lower prices resulting from reduced labor costs quickly won over the skeptics. Piggly Wiggly also introduced price marking on every item and checkout stands, features we now consider essential. The quirky name has spawned countless origin stories. When asked why he chose such an unusual name, Saunders supposedly replied, "So people will ask that very question." Others claim he got the inspiration after seeing piglets struggling to get under a fence. While Piggly Wiggly has retreated primarily to the South today, its legacy lives on in every supermarket you visit. That shopping cart you push, Piggly Wiggly helped popularize it. Those checkout conveyor belts, Piggly Wiggly again. Even the concept of browsing aisles organized by food category started with the pig. Some innovations are so fundamental, we forget they weren't always there. Just like Piggly Wiggly itself for many Americans who grew up with the cheerful pig logo. A few months ago, I had no idea what a health ring even was until my fiancée got me one, and I have to say, I'm shocked this isn't a widely known and used product. It tracks my stress levels, and what I found out is that some supplements made my stress score spike, while others actually helped bring it down. I adjusted a few things based on that, and honestly, I feel 10 years younger. My wife mainly uses it to track her menstrual cycles, and she is obsessed with her sleep quality score. I noticed they are currently running a limited 69% discount, but I don't know how long it will last. It's currently only $60, and it's clear. This one is the best bang for your buck, with other health rings priced around $350 with less functions. They managed to price it this low because they cut out the middleman like Amazon, Walmart, etc., who drive up the price and take a big margin, ending up with the customer paying 3 to 5 times more. If you are on TV, you can check it out yourself by pausing the video and scanning the QR code with your phone camera or clicking the first link in the description of this video. Alpha Beta. Shopping at Alpha Beta was like visiting a library where you could eat all the books. This unique West Coast chain earned its unusual name from its truly novel approach, organizing all products in alphabetical order. Need apples and bread? They were right next to each other in aisle 1. While this alphabetical gimmick didn't last long, the name stuck around and became a beloved fixture in California and Nevada communities for decades. Alpha Beta stores were known for their unusually wide aisles at a time when most grocery stores packed shelves together tightly. This extra space meant fewer cart crashes and awkward moments of trying to squeeze past someone examining every can of soup. The chain prided itself on always having good deals on essentials like milk and bread, which made it popular with budget-conscious families during economic challenges of the 60s and 70s. What made Alpha Beta special was its remarkable customer service in an era before self-checkout lanes. Cashiers greeted regulars by name, and baggers would often walk elderly customers to their cars. The produce section was a particular point of pride. Fruits and vegetables were selected and displayed with care, often accompanied by handwritten signs suggesting recipes for the more unusual items. Alpha Beta eventually disappeared when larger chains absorbed it, but its memory lingers for many baby boomers who associate it with childhood grocery trips. The distinctive green and white logo represented more than just a store. It was a community landmark where families gathered weekly to stock their pantries. National Tea. Despite what the name might suggest, National Tea had nothing to do with fancy tea parties or British customs. This grocery giant once rivaled the mighty A&P with over 1,500 stores spread across America. The company began in Chicago in the early 1900s and rapidly expanded throughout the Midwest, becoming a household name for several generations of shoppers. National Tea stores were known for pioneering several shopping innovations we take for granted today. They were among the first to introduce those little paper punch cards for discounts. Collect enough punches and you'd get something free. This primitive loyalty program had customers diligently keeping those cards in their wallets for months. If you ever wondered where the concept of buy 10, get 1 free started, you can thank National Tea. The weekly ritual for many families involved shopping at National Tea and then heading to the local diner for a treat. Kids would beg to push the cart, hoping to sneak sugary cereals into it when mom wasn't looking. The strategy rarely worked, but occasionally persistence paid off with a compromise. Usually something less sugary, but still considered a treat by most standards. By the mid-70s, National Tea began to fade after being bought out by another company. Stores were rebranded or closed entirely, leaving loyal shoppers confused about where to find their favorite products. Grand Union wasn't just a grocery store. It was practically a department store that happened to sell food. Starting way back in the 1800s, this Northeast powerhouse managed to stick around until the early 2000s, giving it one of the longest runs in American retail history. The name itself evokes something grandiose and impressive, which matched its reputation for having everything under one roof before supercenters existed. The Sunday newspaper ritual for many families centered around clipping Grand Union coupons. Kitchen tables across the Northeast would be covered with scissors, newspapers, and envelopes as families prepared for their weekly shopping trip. Grand Union was famous for doubling coupons long before other stores adopted the practice, making it the champion of frugal shoppers everywhere. In its prime, Grand Union offered an impressive variety of products that went beyond typical groceries, household items, small appliances, and even clothing in some locations. The stores were social gathering spots where neighbors would bump into each other and catch up on community news while deciding between brands of laundry detergent or breakfast cereals. Ironically, what killed Grand Union was its resistance to change. While other stores modernized with computer inventory systems and updated layouts, Grand Union stuck to its traditional approach. By the time management realized they needed to update their stores and systems, competitors had already won over younger shoppers with brighter stores and modern conveniences. The company struggled through the 90s with outdated stores and mounting debt before finally closing for good. Food Fair Pantry Pride, the grocery store with an identity crisis. Food Fair started in the 1920s and became a powerhouse by the 1950s with hundreds of locations that suburban families depended on for their weekly shopping. The chain was particularly strong in the Northeast and Florida, where its red and white signs became landmarks in growing communities. However, trying to keep up with changing times, the company rebranded as Pantry Pride in the 1970s, confusing loyal customers who suddenly found their familiar food fair transformed overnight. What made the food fair special was its focus on family shopping. The stores were designed with wider aisles to accommodate mothers with children in tow, and many locations featured small play areas where kids could be entertained while parents shopped, revolutionary for its time. They also pioneered in-store bakeries that filled the air with the irresistible smell of fresh bread and donuts, a marketing tactic that proved impossible to resist. The company's downfall stemmed from an unusual source: ambition beyond groceries. In the 1980s, instead of focusing on modernizing their stores, Pantry Pride's management decided to venture into completely different business territories. Their infamous attempt to purchase the cosmetics giant Revlon is still taught in business schools as a cautionary tale. The takeover attempt required massive loans, which ultimately sank the company. By the mid-1980s, most Food Fair Pantry Pride locations had vanished, leaving behind empty buildings that older shoppers would point to and say, "That used to be where we bought our groceries." Colonial stores. The rooster crows at dawn, but Colonial stores are crowded about fresh products all day long. With its distinctive rooster logo, nicknamed Big Star, Colonial Stores was a beloved grocery chain throughout the South from the 1940s through the 1970s. The company began in 1901 in Norfolk, Virginia, and slowly expanded across southern states, becoming a fixture in communities from Maryland to Florida. Colonial stores created a unique shopping atmosphere that blended modern convenience with old-fashioned service. Their bakeries were legendary among customers, with fresh bread that came out of the oven several times daily. The smell would waft through the entire store, making it nearly impossible to leave without at least one baked good. Many baby boomers recall being rewarded for good behavior during shopping trips with a fresh cookie from the Colonial bakery counter. The company's marketing genius showed in its creation of the cartoon rooster mascot, which appeared in newspaper ads and store displays. Children would excitedly point out the chicken store when passing by with their parents. Later, some Colonial locations were even rebranded as Big Star after the popular mascot. While most grocery chains focused solely on food, Colonial stores incorporated community involvement into their business model. They sponsored local baseball teams, hosted cooking demonstrations, and offered meeting spaces for community groups. Aholds Buy Low. Before no-frills shopping became trendy, there was Buy Low, the grocery store that prided itself on keeping things simple to keep prices low. Founded in 1961 in Greenville, South Carolina, Buy Low was revolutionary in its straightforward approach to grocery shopping. The original Buy Low stores looked more like warehouses than traditional supermarkets, with items often displayed in their shipping boxes rather than neatly arranged on shelves. The Buy and Buy Low referred to the dual benefit of low prices and good quality, a combination that was harder to find than you might think in the 1960s grocery landscape. The stores featured concrete floors instead of fancy tiles, basic lighting instead of elaborate displays, and minimal decor. What they lacked in ambiance, they made up for in savings. One early company slogan proudly declared, "We're not pretty, but we're cheap," a refreshing honesty rarely seen in today's marketing. Buy Low pioneered many cost-cutting techniques that would later be adopted by discount chains everywhere. They negotiated directly with manufacturers to get better prices, reduced operating hours to save on labor costs, and limited their product selection to items that sold quickly. The original Buy Low chain changed hands multiple times throughout the decades, eventually becoming part of the Dutch retail group Ahold in the 1970s. While a chain called Buy Low still exists today in some southern states, older shoppers insist it bears little resemblance to the bare-bones, budget-friendly stores they remember from their youth. Winn-Dixie. The jingle still gets stuck in your head. The beef people. The beef people. Winn-Dixie wasn't just a grocery store. It was the soundtrack of the South for decades. Founded in 1925, this supermarket chain grew to over 1,000 locations across the southeastern United States, becoming as much a part of Southern culture as sweet tea and humidity. The red and white logo was a familiar sight in strip malls and shopping centers from Florida to Texas. Winn-Dixie stores were known for their exceptional meat departments, which is why they proudly called themselves the Beef People in advertisements. Their butchers actually knew what they were doing, unlike today when asking for a special cut might get you a blank stare. The meat counter was where many Southern moms taught their children important life lessons about selecting the perfect roast for Sunday dinner. For many kids growing up in the South, the highlight of grocery shopping was the free cookie from the Winn-Dixie bakery. This wasn't a marketing gimmick, it was a genuine tradition. The bakery employees knew that a chocolate chip cookie could turn a cranky shopping companion into a cooperative one. Those cookies may have been small, but the memory of them remains large for many baby boomers. The chain hit rough financial waters in the early 2000s, filing for bankruptcy protection in 2005. Though Winn-Dixie still exists in a reduced form today, it's hardly the powerhouse it once was. Many locations closed, leaving vacant buildings and confused loyal customers wondering where to shop now. The chain that once dominated Southern grocery shopping found itself squeezed between high-end specialty markets and discount stores, losing its distinctive place in the market. The lesson: even beloved institutions need to adapt or risk fading away. Lucky stores. How lucky were customers who shopped at Lucky stores? Very. This California-based chain managed to create a shopping experience that was both practical and fun. Not an easy feat when selling everyday necessities. At its height in the 1980s, Lucky operated over 400 stores across the western United States. The company began in 1935 when a group of independent store owners joined forces to compete against larger chains, ironically becoming a giant chain themselves. The Lucky shopping experience revolved around their famous Lucky Price Patrol commercials. These ads featured real shoppers being surprised by the Price Patrol, who would compare their Lucky receipt with prices at other stores, showing the savings. It wasn't just marketing. Lucky really did focus on keeping prices low, making them popular during tough economic times. Shoppers would joke about needing lucky timing to catch all the good deals. One unique aspect of Lucky was their introduction of in-store food centers, early versions of the prepared food sections we take for granted today. These centers offered hot rotisserie chickens, sandwiches, and side dishes decades before grab-and-go meals became common in other stores. For busy families in the 1970s and 80s, this innovation meant the difference between a home-cooked meal and fast food. Lucky's fortunes changed dramatically in the 1990s when the chain was acquired by American stores and later converted to Albertsons. For California shoppers, the transition was jarring. Going to bed with a Lucky store in your neighborhood and waking up to an Albertsons sign on the same building. Many customers continued to call them Lucky for years afterward, a testament to the brand loyalty they had built over decades. Jewel. Have you ever called a store by the wrong name for years because old habits die hard? That's what happened with Jewel. Started in 1899 as a door-to-door coffee delivery service, Jewel evolved into one of the Midwest's most beloved grocery chains. The company grew steadily throughout the 20th century, becoming especially dominant in the Chicago area, where nearly every neighborhood had a Jewel store within easy reach. Jewel transformed grocery shopping from a chore into an experience. Their stores were among the first to add music, wider aisles, and organized departments that made finding items easier. In 1961, Jewel merged with the Osco drug chain, creating the combined Jewel-Osco stores that offered both groceries and pharmacy items under one roof, a revolutionary concept at the time. Despite the name change, loyal customers simply kept calling it Jewel, ignoring the Osco part entirely. Even today, decades later, Chicagoans will say, "I'm running to the Jewel," regardless of what the sign outside actually says. The bakery department at Jewel deserves special mention. Their donuts achieved cult status among Midwesterners. The classic Jewel chocolate donut with chocolate frosting was the stuff of legend, moist, perfectly sweetened, and somehow always fresh. Sunday mornings in many Chicago households weren't complete without a box of Jewel donuts on the table. Some families would send members to different Jewel locations if their local store ran out of the coveted treats. Throughout changes in ownership and management, Jewel maintained its position as a Midwestern institution. While many regional grocery chains disappeared, Jewel adapted and survived. The secret to their longevity? Understanding that grocery stores aren't just places to buy food, they're community institutions where neighbors meet, families teach children about budgeting, and holiday meal traditions begin with a shopping list. Dominick's. Chicago shoppers still get misty-eyed at the mention of Dominick's. This regional powerhouse opened its first store in 1918 and grew to dominate the Chicago grocery scene for nearly a century. Dominick's wasn't just a supermarket, it was part of the city's identity. The chain expanded to over 100 locations throughout Illinois, becoming the go-to grocery destination for generations of Chicagoland families. What set Dominick's apart was its outstanding deli department. The fresh-cut meats and cheeses were legendary, with employees who knew exactly how thin to slice your prosciutto or how much potato salad would feed a family of 4. Weekend shoppers would often find themselves in long deli lines, but nobody minded the wait because it gave them time to decide between the Italian or German potato salad, both made fresh in-store. Dominick's decline came when larger national retailers began moving into their territory. The once mighty local chain couldn't compete with the buying power and marketing budgets of national retailers. By the early 2000s, Dominick's was struggling, and the final stores closed their doors in December 2013. The closures left grocery gaps in many Chicago neighborhoods and put thousands of employees out of work right before the holidays. A sad end to a beloved Chicago institution. Farmer Jack. It's always savings time at Farmer Jack. If you grew up in Michigan from the 1960s through early 2000s, this slogan is probably burned into your brain. Farmer Jack was more than a grocery store. It was a Michigan institution with over 100 locations at its peak. With its distinctive red and yellow signs featuring a farmer character, these stores were neighborhood fixtures where families did their weekly shopping for decades. Farmer Jack gained a reputation for exceptional sales and promotions. Their famous Bonus Savings Club card was one of the first grocery loyalty programs, offering exclusive discounts that had shoppers digging through couch cushions for their cards before heading to the store. The weekly Farmer Jack ad circular was required reading for budget-conscious families who would plan meals around whatever was on special that week. Perhaps most memorable was Farmer Jack's produce section, which was arranged to look like an old-fashioned market with wooden crates and barrels. Long before farm-to-table became trendy, Farmer Jack emphasized connections to local Michigan farms, especially during summer months when local fruits and vegetables were abundant. The chain's parent company, A&P, closed all Farmer Jack locations in 2007, leaving Michigan shoppers with one fewer option for their grocery needs and a lot of unused loyalty cards in their wallets. Eagle Food Centers. Double Coupon Day at Eagle Food Centers was like winning a mini lottery for budget-conscious shoppers. This Midwest chain operated in Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana, reaching its peak in the 1980s with over 100 stores. Eagle's blue and red logo with its distinctive eagle silhouette was a common sight in strip malls and shopping centers throughout the region. Eagle transformed grocery shopping from a chore into a game with their aggressive promotion strategies. Their famous Eagle Savers program turned cutting coupons into a competitive sport. Shoppers would proudly brag about how much they saved, sometimes walking away with carts full of groceries for pennies on the dollar. The cashiers would often need to call managers over to approve particularly impressive coupon combinations, creating a moment of supermarket fame for the savvy shopper. The chain's downfall came from trying to compete with emerging superstores like Walmart and Meijer. Eagle couldn't match their prices or selection, and attempts to renovate stores drained financial resources without bringing in enough new customers. The company declared bankruptcy in 2000, and the last Eagle store closed in 2003. Former shoppers still reminisce about the satisfaction of watching their grocery total drop dramatically as the cashier scanned double and sometimes triple coupons, a thrill that modern digital coupons just don't provide. These forgotten grocery chains were more than just places to buy food. They were community hubs where memories were made, traditions established, and neighborhoods defined. Relics of an era before self-checkout and online shopping.